emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 1448.DE0227, certificate number 36460. Wuppertal Schwebebahn.
Herzlich willkommen im Intercity der Deutschen Bahn nach Dresden Hauptbahnhof. Unser nächster Halt ist Wuppertal Hauptbahnhof.
Did I say that right? Wuppertal Schwebebahn.
Good job.
It's fun.
It is fun. You got the V right. And neither of us are going to do a very good German accent unless we do a comical one.
Wuppertal, home of the Wupper.
I know that you're a public transit fan. Did you vote? So some listeners may not know this, although Futurelings certainly will celebrate it as a national holiday. But here in Seattle, we had a proposal to extend the monorail that we constructed for the World's Fair in 1962. There was a proposal in the 1990s to extend the monorail and make it a citywide transit system.
Because if you don't understand, it only goes from the fairgrounds, kind of by the Space Needle, about a mile toward downtown?
Yeah,
how long's the
over
monorail?
A mile.
And then back again. It connects the Space Needle with a mall.
It has two tracks that run side by side, and a red train and a blue train. And when I was a kid, and during the World's Fair, very exciting. You'd take the red train would go one way and the blue train would go the other, and then they would reverse direction. But downtown is not where you normally are if you want to go to the Space Needle and vice versa.
It has some limited utility for tourists who might be staying downtown and want to go up to the Seattle Center and museums, or who are going to see both the Seattle Center museums and Pike Place Market or something downtown. But it just runs back and forth all day. And I think it's like when I was a kid, we would just ride it for fun, basically. Yeah. What a treat to park on. I think my parents just didn't want to pay for parking. Park on Queen Anne and take the monorail.
So fun to ride as a kid. And when I was a kid, like everything that had been built in the 50s and 60s that seemed really promising, by the mid-70s, it had all fallen into decay. And the monorail was kind of grotty.
It kept getting caught up there. Do you remember? Like it would get stuck on the track. People would have to be rescued by cherry pickers sometimes.
Yeah, and that actually later on that was a geometry problem actually after they changed it. But the old downtown station kind of was this elevated station that created a really dark intersection there at what would it be, Pike and Fourth?
Fifth?
Pike and Fourth or Fifth. There was the whole intersection was covered by this wrought iron kind of,
which I only vaguely remember.
Yeah, that's another example of the generation gap between the two of us.
Because now it stops at a dying mall, which is what you want.
But there was a little alleyway of old taverns that had like neon lights flashing, and it felt like a red light district kind of.
Blade Runner.
It was, and under the station was where they would roast chestnuts at Christmas time, and there would always be somebody playing an accordion that was sort of echoing in the. It was a crazy environment to have lost when they tore it all down and built this gaudy 80s mall.
Which was briefly the nice mall.
It was cool for a little bit. Yeah.
And then the nice mall moved a few blocks away to Pacific Place, and then now there are no nice malls.
Yeah, I remember that was the first food court I ever went to, that Westlake Mall.
The monorail would drop you off at a food court, which I think is now pretty much gone. And there was like a there was some good bookstore there, that maybe a Brentano's that Seattle only had one of.
Yeah.
That's my only memory of that mall.
When they originally tore the old monorail station down and built the mall, they had to rejigger the way that the tracks made the turn along 4th, I think. And when they rejiggered it, they got the geometry wrong. So
is that right?
The first time they ran the trains side by side, the two tracks converged a little too much, and the two trains wedged.
They hit each other?
They hit each other and wedged into place, and they had to redo the whole thing.
Classic.
But did you vote for the monorail?
So we moved back in 2006, so I missed my chance to vote for the monorail, which I would have done so many times. Fraudulently, multiple ballots, dead people. I would have voted to extend the monorail, because what fun.
What fun. And it was an example of Seattle politics. We voted, the people of Seattle voted multiple times against the construction, the like city-funded construction of sports stadiums, baseball stadium and football stadium.
But they did it anyway.
And they did it anyway somehow. And the monorail...
It's a limited democracy we have here.
That's right. The monorail is the flip side of it. We voted multiple times, and that is to say we voted for the extension of the monorail.
All things monorail.
And then there was, it was determined that the vote was not binding because other things, unclear why. And then we voted again, and I think voted a third time for it before the people of Seattle were finally exhausted. And the entire time, the business community and government were really against constructing the monorail and lobbied against it and refused to accept the vote.
Am I right that a lot of it is a funding question, that the city of Seattle and or King County did not have tax authority for transit, but they did have authority for the pre-existing monorail? So it was kind of an end run around transit funding difficulties?
Yeah, that still is a problem here in Seattle with taxing authority. But, there were so many options of government, participation in it. One of the problems of monorails is that they're expensive. And part of their expense is that they're not widely adopted. So every monorail system is custom. And it's so
all we have to do to get monorails to catch on is to get monorails
to catch on. It's a terrible problem, because monorails are, in a lot of ways, a preferable form of public transit. They're above the roads.
Yeah, they're not at grade, so you don't have to worry about intersections and whatnot, or you don't have to tunnel.
You don't have to tunnel.
What makes them better than other kinds of elevated railway? Anything, or is it just a choice?
Well, a nicely built monorail you can build on pylons rather than on a superstructure, like an elevated railway has to have big supporting legs on either side, because the tracks run side by side, and it's just much more superstructure. There are beautiful monorail designs that are built with, even like the one in Seattle often is just on a single pylon.
A sufficiently well-balanced monorail, it could just be like a fire pole.
Just like a fire pole, exactly. But also, the view from a monorail is kind of unobstructed.
Yeah.
And also, and we'll get to this more and more, but the way you can construct a monorail really uses centrifugal force to its advantage. So every train, as it goes around a corner, has a certain amount of centrifugal force acting on it that kind of pushes it against the outside rail.
And means you have to slow down? Is that right?
You have to slow down, and also it kind of, as a passenger, you feel yourself being pushed to the outside of the turn.
Sure. And I'm sure there's inefficiencies due to friction.
Friction, and there's a lot of lean in the train. Whereas a monorail, you can kind of build to take advantage of that. You can cantilever or not cantilever. You can
just
bank
the track.
You can bank the track in such a way that that from the position of the rider, you feel the centrifugal force much more as a downforce
And yet our monorail never goes above. What's the high speed of the Seattle monorail?
Yeah.
I've sat up front by the driver. It's like 24 or something.
They keep it pretty low. That's right. And and our monorail is concrete and it runs on rubber tires.
That's another thing I was going to say. It doesn't have to be metal track, right?
Nope. No, we use rubber tires on cement pylons, but the most exciting monorail technologies are maglev, and with maglev technology, which is to say that they hover, using magnetism.
Magnets repelling.
They could go infinitely fast. They could go faster than the speed of light, Ken.
Really?
They could go 10 times faster than the speed of light.
Einstein was like, speed of light's an absolute limit, except for monorails. If they have magnets.
Maglev monorails.
If the juggalos can ever figure out how to give us maglev monorails. I have a friend, by the way, who was part of the abortive Seattle monorail project planning. And her take was that it was always doomed because it was just impossible to get over, water. In this case, the ship canal. Like there was no good solution to get it to Ballard.
Yeah, and one of the solutions was to put it in a tunnel, but then it's just a train in a tunnel.
It's not a monorail anymore.
And to build that kind of ribbon of track over the ship canal would have been an insane engineering feat.
But I still would have voted for it. Even if somebody had explained to me how insane this was, I'd be like, nope.
Yep.
Monorails for tomorrow.
And so many of us did. But I think what they ultimately were going to have to do was redesign the system, because 1962 monorail technology and 1995 technology were very different things.
Yeah, you're extending a system, but the current system is just a 1 mile tourist stop.
Right. So we're going to have to build a new one. But it has there was a lot of opposition to it, and I think a lot of the opposition from the city types. Was that it seemed ridiculous. Like, Seattle has always wanted to be a serious metropolitan area. It has a self-image about itself that dates back to the 19th century, that we were a city of industry. And
why can't we be Chicago?
Yeah. There's a self-seriousness to Seattle that isn't true in other cities. It's one of the reasons that Portland is kind of more of a 21st century town than Seattle.
Because they stole our whimsy.
Yeah.
And it turned out it's the century of whimsy.
They're a little bit goofy and they're proud of it, whereas Seattle has always been kind of a stuffed shirt. And there was actually surprisingly a lot of resistance to it, just based on the fact that it was going to make us look silly. Even though in the 60s it seemed like it made us look like the city of the future. But
it turned out that future was maybe 1975. So in 1962 it was the future. In 2004, not so much.
I was talking to a contractor about induction cooktops. Are you familiar with induction cooktops?
I don't know what that is.
Induction cooktops are a new form of stove, and instead of heating up an element, either using gas or electricity to heat up the stove top, which then communicates the heat to the pan, induction cooking.
The stovetop stays cold?
The stovetop does not get hot. The technology transfers the current directly to the cookware. So the pot gets the ions in the pot or whatever, the atoms get agitated by the technology of induction. And, you can't use every kind of pot on an induction.
Right. You need special.
It has to, well, not special, but it has to be metal that is inductive.
Induction compatible.
And it's a phenomenal technology. It heats up the pots a lot faster. The cooktop is immediately cool after you're done.
Good for the cat.
But it has not caught on. And partly the reason it hasn't caught on is it hasn't caught on. Right. People are suspicious.
Resistant of the thing that might be, I can tell which 6-month period you bought a house in 2021.
Even though it seems like the future of cooktops, when people when kitchen designers talk about it, clients are suspicious of it, primarily because people don't use it.
It's the electric car problem.
Right.
For 20 years, the tech was there and seemed fine, and yet only Ed Begley had one.
And so the monorail, the quasi ridiculousness of it is largely because most of the time you see them in airports. They're still kind of a novelty because you only encounter them rarely.
But there's no reason why they're better at that length or scale. It's just those are the kind of projects where you can get people to pass off on a monorail.
Well, no. Monorails are best kind of the way they're used in Seattle right now, which is a closed system, either a loop or just a to B line between 2 points or with 4 or 5 points.
Right, because sidings and stuff are difficult. Multiple trains and multiple routes intersecting would be a nightmare, huh?
And also there are no, to build a siding, to build a, to do any kind of repair work or even to build junctions. Even to turn a monorail from one rail to the next is much more of a complicated engineering issue than it is to just put them on 4 tracks. And so, but again, these are technologies that it's not impossible to solve. It would be easier and cheaper if this was a technology that everybody had embraced. Because this would have been mass produced, and in mass production is where the efficiencies lie.
Time to go back in time and get Eisenhower really into monorails.
Well, back in time is where our show today begins, Ken.
I feel like many of our shows start back in time. It's so rare that we start a show in the future.
Right. Maybe we should start doing that. Maybe this show should start in the future when monorails are everywhere.
Zoom, zoom.
One of the things that propelled me to run for the Seattle City Council in 2015 was not just a kind of frustration that had persisted since the 90s about the way city government made decisions then that you could tell by 2010 had produced bad results. A lot of the policies that the city council enacted in 1995 to punish big developers had by 2010 produced a housing crisis. And we had a transit crisis by 2010. And there were, and the roads, we gained in population quite a bit.
Traffic went nuts between 2005 and 2010 even, and it wasn't great before.
Traffic went crazy. When I moved to my house in the South End in 2007, I could drive from my house to anywhere in the city in 18 minutes. And by 2015, it became 45 minutes. It was just crazy. And my feeling at the time was that it was a result of bad planning and bad decisions from 10 years prior. But I really wanted alternative transit, and it was a big part of my platform. And I was, as you can imagine, maybe kind of ridiculed for it.
You wanted zip lines and gondolas too. You never saw any transit system too steampunk.
Well, and it's right, and it's Seattle is built on 7 hills like Rome. That's why they built a city here, because they were like, it's Rome.
They had to level 6 hills because it had 13 originally.
Yeah, that's right. They took a lot of the hills away, but it makes no sense. It makes less sense for us to have bike trails everywhere than it does for us to have gondolas everywhere.
I hate to say it, but we are never going to be a universal bike city.
We've spent tens of millions of dollars putting bike trails in.
Electric bikes
have changed it. You're right. But if you think about going from the top of Queen Anne to the top of Capitol Hill, well, of course, a gondola, except for those float planes, those pesky float planes.
It should go through the middle of the Space Needle.
Gondolas and monorails and electric staircases, which is a technology you actually see.
They're called escalators now.
Well, yeah, but there are other ones that are like at the sidewalk level, right? That actually are municipal. There are some where you kind of step on. You put 1 foot on it and 1 foot on a skateboard or on your bicycle. I'm not exactly sure how they all work.
That seems complicated.
Yeah. But these were issues, some of these issues were recognized all the way back in the early days of the 19th century. And partly it is that roads were expensive to build. Often roads are going through areas where there's not room for a ton of other things, up through valleys. Roads to dig out and grade an area in order to build a road. You almost immediately, and it's, as you were saying, it's the traffic problem with the episode of Omnibus not very long ago, where we talked about how no matter how many lanes of traffic or lanes of road you build, there's always going to be traffic to fill it.
Induced demand.
roads always get clogged. And in particular, if you're somebody who's running a factory, if you're somebody who's moving goods to market, the more time it takes to carry your goods to market, if anything that interrupts that, it's costing you money. And so there was, from the kind of dawn of the industrial age, a recognition or a desire to build better ways of moving, particularly goods. Human beings were not the initial
Who cares about commuters?
Commuters, they're living in a coal-stained tenement in East London.
But like the faster we get this produce out or these widgets out,
right? And building a train, a railroad, is all well and good, but a railroad is at grade, and it has all the problems of at grade intersections and crashes and just traffic, clogged with other people using that grade. Cows, goats.
Troops of goats.
Troops of goats,
With a goat
satanic
herd.
goats.
You want to be up in the sky or under the earth.
Up in the sky or under the earth.
The two options.
In 1821, a man, an engineer and a civil engineer by the name of Henry Robinson Palmer, who had already been working on road construction, came up with the idea for an elevated train that actually hung from, it was suspended from above, a suspension railway. So it wasn't a monorail built on a rail, but was actually hanging down from a rail.
Okay.
And he patented this design, and in his vision, it was horse-drawn.
Where is the horse? On the rail?
The horse is on the ground, pulling
a thing in the air.
A thing in the air. And it was, the idea was that it was much, it was...
Why doesn't the horse pull something on the ground?
Well, you are now able to have your big container of grain.
It can be wider than the street.
Well, and you can have traffic going on underneath it.
Well, to some degree, you still got a horse.
I mean, there's the horse there, right? But the horse could be over in a horse-sized track.
Right.
Cars could, vehicles, not cars, but other horse carts
and wagons
could be going by. And this horse is just sort of, or team of horses are just sort of plodding along, pulling this big grain train.
And did he see it as freight?
It was freight.
I see.
And it was, Henry Robinson Palmer did, actually was a very prominent engineer in the UK for a lot of the 19th century, building roads and coming up with this kind of scheme. And his railway sort of appealed to, it wasn't really ever built as a functional thing, but the idea of it appealed to the popular imagination. Because at the time, it wasn't, nothing was set in stone. This was the dawn of the balloon age. Where are the railways going to go? We've just invented them. Now what do we do? You can't just, it's hard to believe that we are still using trains that would be completely recognizable to someone in the 1820s. It's just like the Fender Telecaster. They invented it, and it kind of perfected the form.
Got it right the first time.
Yeah.
But this was the first time anybody would have seen any kind of elevated idea for an elevated transit of any kind, and any kind of elevated vehicle of any kind, right? I mean, apart from people goofing around in hot air balloons. So it really would have had some of the excitement that we later saw with the invention of the airplane or the helicopter or whatever.
Yeah, there were, this idea had kind of been sketched out on paper, but it wouldn't have, the public would never have been aware of it. And this was during a time when there was a lot of, the industrial nations of the world were kind of watching each other and collaborating with each other. And this idea appealed particularly to the Germans.
Why?
In the same way that a lot of mathematicians are Hungarians, a lot of engineers are Germans. And you can only account to it because they have very truncated emotional lives. And so,
we would get excited about our our families or about
Sure,
philosophical ideas, poetry.
chocolate. The Germans like chocolate, but
They kind of like poetry. I mean, it's
sort
a
of.
nation of Goethe.
Yeah. And name a second German poet.
Goethe was just he was like kind of a neurodivergent genetic sport or something.
Yeah,
And they
he's
love
the one.
They love they can say they have Goethe, but yeah, there's not a lot of romanticism in their soul after that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's a lot of engineering in their soul, and there were other attempts. There was actually in the UK or outside of London, there was a suspended railway built in 1825 in Cheshunt that was built to carry bricks. Same kind of, it was a short line built to carry bricks,
Like from a factory to
a barge.
yeah.
And in order to promote it, they carried some passengers in the first trip. Like, haha, look, we can actually put people in our brick thing. And it was, it became a popular like tourist thing.
It would almost seem like an amusement park ride. I guess.
Amusement park ride, exactly. Look at us, wow.
Let's go on Brick Mountain.
I've never been 20 feet in the air.
Yeah.
Ah.
They all died.
And then they all died. But in 1826, a German engineer by the name of Friedrich Harkert Elberfeld started to recognize that the industrial area that was coming up in Germany around the Rhine River, there were a lot of mines and factories that were, kind of up these valleys, and there was a real need to bring that ore down through the smaller valleys to the Rhine and to the Ruhr and get that stuff on barges. And so, Elberfeld proposed a railway, again, a suspended railway that was going to come down the river valley of the Wupper River, the Wupper River.
Home of the Wupper.
And the Wupper River, it was going to increase his production, and he wanted buy-in from all the burghers of the Wupper, as we like to say, the burghers of the Wupper, and unfortunately, his design kind of skipped past a lot of the other mines and industrialists along the way.
They weren't paying attention.
Yeah, and so it never came to pass. But the idea had been planted in the imagination of the Wupper. And the wonderful thing about the Wupper is that if you follow the Wupper upstream all the way, at a certain point, Upper Wupper becomes the Wipper.
Upper Wupper is the Wipper?
Upper Wupper is the Wipper. Isn't that wonderful?
What's the Upper Wipper?
The Upper Wipper is the Wieper.
It's the Dr. Seuss Valley.
So the suspension railway technology kind of bounced around in people's imaginations throughout the 19th century. And
without actually getting built.
None of them got built. And, they're expensive. And particularly once you get into a situation where they're not being pulled by a horse, but they're being driven by a steam engine, the means of propulsion then become...
Is it in the train or is it in the track?
Yeah. Are you pulling it with a cable? Are you is the steam engine at the end? Are you driving wheels? I mean, this is before really rubber tires.
Right.
So are you pulling it? Like how does it power itself? Mm-hmm. In 1886 in Greenville, New Jersey, the Enos Electric Railway builds a little demonstration railway. It only goes about 1,500 yards, but it seems very cool and possible.
It's one of these elevated ones?
It's a suspension train, but it doesn't. No. It already suffers from the problem of, well, who's doing this? Nobody. So why are we doing this? Yeah. The advantages aren't so apparent. Particularly, building these giant infrastructure projects, cost is like right up there.
And at grade wouldn't have been as big an issue back then when there's less traffic competing on thoroughfares.
The reason it becomes
and if it's passenger or even if it's freight, you got to get the people or stuff in the air,
and
which is fine if you're coming from a factory where it's already at that level.
That's
if it's coming from a silo or whatever, but
you got to climb some stairs. Why bother?
Right.
And so it's mostly envisioned as a thing to go through valleys where it's a constricted space you're trying to travel through, right? If it's not Spokane, Washington, or Salt Lake City where you can build roads in every direction as wide as you want, that's when suddenly it seems like maybe there's a use case for it where the extra expense would pay off. Right.
The valley is going to have a river at the bottom. Maybe all the usable land next to the river is already horse carts or train tracks or whatever.
Right. Or river.
If it's all river, yeah. I mean, if it's all river, I don't know how you build your supports, but...
Well, you put them on the side of the mountain.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, there you go. Enter in a character, now we're talking about the later part of the 19th century. Enter in a character, again, a German, and again from the Wupper Valley, Wupper, by the name of Eugen Langen. I wish that my name had that much rhythm.
Eugen
Langen. And Eugen was an inventor and a kind of scion and a fun swing for the fences type of guy who made his initial fame by inventing the sugar cube.
Back then, sugar was always a dodecahedron. And Eugen said, there has to be a better way.
And you don't imagine, at least I don't, that making sugar into a cube would have required a ton of engineering, but it did. He worked on it for many years.
It makes sense. Now that I think about it, they do not make each cube individually. I don't know. How do they do it? Is a bigger cube getting diced?
How do they do it?
Are there a bunch of little molds? Is there like a muffin tray with little cubes? I just realized I have no idea where sugar cubes come from.
How do you bind a sugar cube together?
Right. I mean, it's crystallizing together with its own sugary self, but you don't want it to be, I mean, it still has to powder up nicely.
Right. You want to be able to throw it into a cup of coffee and have it go away?
I think I've come around to this. Sugar cubes are not possible.
Well, that's where we tip our hats to Eugen Langen.
With his Eugen Langen engine.
And you have to imagine, and the Eugen Langen engine is something we're going to talk about immediately after the sugar cube. Eugen Langen was one of the very first people to recognize the possibility of the gasoline engine, which was only being kind of developed at the time. And
he was building all these things just so he could put sugar in your gas tank and screw up your scooter.
I think he may have even been trying to power the gas engine with sugar, but it didn't pan out. But Eugen Langen built the first gasoline engine factory.
There was a Eugen Langen engine, and so the sugar cube was just a Eugen Langen tangent?
That was a tangent. Yeah, okay. The engine he started the first engine factory and then a subsequent engine factory. That engine factory became Deutz AG, which makes engines to this day. They're one of the largest engine
purveyors.
Engines.
You wanted something that sounded like engine?
Dr. Rosen.
I don't know if I have another engine sounding word.
But and so he was an industrialist, and he conceived of a suspension railway that he was going to run through the town of Wuppertal.
Why Wuppertal?
Wuppertal was on the Wupper River, and this was was Wuppertal actually kind of an interesting town. It was not actually a town until 1929. What you had in 1929 was a lot of little towns, Barmen and Elberfeld, and Ronsdorf and Kronenberg and Langerfeld and Beyenberg and Wovinkel. All
your favorites.
And they were all, that's right, they all banded together to solve crimes. But they kind of incorporated as one giant town of Wuppertal. And what they are is the Wupper River at that point is an extremely steep-sided a canyon, and all these towns were little towns along the length of the river. And in combining to be Wuppertal, they became like this very long and linear town that goes down the length of the river, but never wider than you can throw a can of beans.
Wow. I mean, Seattle's kind of a north-south town, but not to that degree.
I mean, and it's not a small town. There are 400,000 people in Wuppertal proper now.
Wow.
And it's outside of Dusseldorf. It's got and it was a mining and early kind of industrial community. And Langen envisioned this sort of Palmer-esque suspended railway going as a means of public transit from one end of Wuppertal to the next, or to the other.
I mean, yeah, a long, thin town of that kind is perfect for a single transit line where you don't have to worry about intersections or anything. You said it's kind of gorge-like, so that maybe elevating it up above the river is the way to go if real estate's scarce. And
crucially, it is a very beautiful town. It is. It's called the greenest city in Germany, and that isn't a reference to its environmental record, but it just has more green space, more trees than any other city in Germany.
Let me take a second to tell you where I've never been to Wuppertal, but I've seen its green spaces, and the first place I saw the Schwebebahn was in the documentary that Wim Wenders made about Pina Bausch, kind of the leading modern dance choreographer of her time. She ran the dance theater in Wuppertal. And Wenders made this amazing. I'd seen some of her pieces in. There's like an Almodovar movie that has one of her pieces. They're really kind of indelible. This one has a bunch of chairs getting knocked down one after the other. And Wenders' idea was to stage all her dance things in outdoor settings.
Oh, yeah.
So you go to the movie and they're doing Pina's famous pieces, but they're doing it like in the middle of a traffic roundabout or at the edge of a quarry or in a beautiful Wuppertal park. And
I love these the great performance art of an earlier time. Now the performance art is what? Just everybody spontaneously breaks into dance at a wedding?
Yeah.
Or breaks into protest.
Or blows someone up at a gender reveal party.
Right.
No, but there's genuine artistry. It's like one of the best dance troupes in Europe. And the great thing about the movie is that it's shot in 3D. And I think we've talked about this.
Yeah.
Like you, I've never been impressed by a 3D movie, but like seeing it, I saw it at Cinerama once in 3D. And because a lot of these dances are shot in a single wide, medium to long shot, instead of in close-ups, you actually, in 3D, you kind of got the sense that you were watching, the screen was like a little box, and you were watching an actual dance troupe perform.
You just had a box on your head.
Exactly. I had to wear plastic glasses for some reason. And they do the Electric Railway is prominently featured. And in fact, they do some of her dances in the very constrained space of the railway cars. And I saw it and I was like, how have I never heard of this crazy train? Like, what even is this? And I've been fascinated by the Schwebebahn ever since, although I have not been there yet.
It's one of those engineering quirks that you would think would be part of the popular imagination. And it's such a wonderful construction that it's stunning that they didn't build lots of them. Because the effect of it and of riding on it is so lovely.
Have you been on it?
No, I've never been. And there's a wonderful movie that is, you can find it on YouTube, and it's called you just Google The Flying Train, and it's filmed in the early 1900s. The train opened in 1901.
I've seen this.
And it's early film. And it's just taken from the train as it goes on a trip through Wuppertal. And you look down, and there are all these 19th century or all these very early 20th century people just going about their business, and it's one of the most affecting sort of casual glimpses of life in a bygone era. I mean, you actually see you see some kid rolling a hoop with a stick. I mean, everybody's wearing bowler hats. It's
People
just
are going to work or working in their yards.
And it's just such a lovely view from the train.
And somehow it's an amazing shape. I don't know if this thing they restored the hell out of it or if it was in some perfect conditions, but it looks like it could have been shot yesterday, especially because of the high-tech hovering camera on this weird overhead rail system. But then it's, like you say, it's juxtaposed with this 120-year-old daily life and beautiful architecture and horse-drawn carts. So it's like you're seeing some alternate Jules Verne universe.
And it's a pre-World War I universe. Yeah. So all of the many devastations of the 20th century and all the ways that technology got corrupted and became, like mass murder instead of utopia.
And you can see why it's the perfect thing. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's good.
You can see why I'm watching it right now. You can see why it's a perfect setting for this kind of a railway because it does go right over the river, unused real estate, with steel Eiffel Tower looking steel girders coming down diagonally to the banks of the river.
Right.
So, using no additional real estate.
And you can still move traffic up and down the river. The only complaint you might have is if you thought that the elevated track over the river wasn't pretty. But of course, it's also made out of this wonderful iron construction.
If you did it today, it would not be pretty. But maybe at the time, this didn't look pretty to them. Like you've heard of people complaining about the Eiffel Tower.
Right.
Who was it? De Maupassant or somebody said he eats breakfast every day at the Eiffel Tower because it's the only place in Paris you can't see the Eiffel Tower. Maybe at the time they would have thought this. They would not have been impressed by the quaintness of it, but it just looks fantastic today.
No, I imagine at the time it would have been considered very cool and technological. And
it seems like it lets ample light through.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't seem like it makes a weird cave-like main drag through town or ruin the river.
No, I think it would have been wonderful then. And the carriages are elegantly built. And watching this little film and seeing the carriages, seeing them pass by, they're just so elegant. And I think that they actually built a special train car for the Kaiser, who came and rode the Wuppertal Railway as part of its inauguration. Of course, he had to have his own car. And I think the car is still there and you can still...
I guess that's the tradition of famous people having their own railway cars. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense on, urban transit like this. But
right.
Do you think the mayor of New York still has his own subway car with hand-added Basquiat graffiti on it? I don't know.
Almost certainly Warren Buffett has his own super train.
I mean, the fact that... really, the secret sauce here is, I don't think this is not a clever insight, but the car is under the track and the whole thing looks upside down.
Yeah.
And do you lose anything to this amazing kind of gravity defying twist? Or is this kind of train just as good as one where the track is underneath where it seems intuitive?
Well, this was opened in 1901. It still is in operation today, and it carries 20 million passengers a year. And if you imagine whatever the population of Wuppertal is, it isn't 20 million. It's
you said 400,000.
400,000 people. So the people of the region use it as public transit. So it isn't just a monorail from downtown Seattle to the Space Needle.
So if there's no disadvantages, you're getting this cool steampunk thing at the price of nothing.
Until 1999, it was the safest railroad in the world. It had never had an accident and no fatalities. And people thought that there was something about it. It was just bulletproof and infallible.
The Qantas of light rail.
In 1999, unfortunately, there was they were doing regular maintenance, and the construction crew actually worked through the night and left a clamp on one of the rails that they didn't see when they knocked off work.
But it's a place where the wheel has to go.
Yeah, and when they started the train again, it hit this clamp and fell into the river. And
the whole train was knocked off the...
Yeah, and 5 people died and 47 were injured, and it was an enormous blow to the whole system. But it was determined what the fault was, and they, in kind of maybe a especially German or at least not American way, they actually found a way to prosecute not the workers who had left the clamp on there, but their supervisors. They actually convicted a couple of people of manslaughter for the deaths, who were responsible for the oversight.
Which makes sense. Yeah.
Right. Although in America, everybody would have been acquitted, and
sure, you go up the ladder, you get less likely to get a conviction.
But the insurance companies would have paid $700 million. Langin was so psyched by this suspended technology that he actually built another train that same year in Dresden, except the Dresden one is a funicular. So it's a suspended funicular.
Well, how does that work? Is the funicular track is
up above it,
going uphill?
Yeah, and the funicular hangs from it, but it's not powered.
I guess there's no reason not to do that.
No reason not to. It's powered the same way other funiculars are, which is that they act as counterbalances to one another. So the one going down is pulling the one going up, and vice versa. Funiculars conserve power by using that, by using their own counterweight.
They're always both going.
Right, always both going.
That's the technical term.
There were some other very interesting suspension railways proposed, and kind of maybe one of the more interesting. In the early 1930s, a Scotsman, and we've gone on record on this show praising the Scots.
We love the thrifty, hardworking, salmon-eating, golfing Scots.
Mm-hmm.
So much.
A Scotsman by the name of George Benny proposed a suspension railway, and this is in the 1930s. Except his was powered by propeller, and it was going to hang over other railroad tracks. So you already had railroads going back and forth, but he perceived, and this is still true to this day, that passenger rail needed to move faster and was often clogged up behind.
So you have a second level,
yes,
like an HOV lane on top.
Right. So you put the fast-moving passenger trains up above. You've already got the right-of-way. It's already train-sized. And he envisioned that they would have giant, propellers. I'm
not sure if that's the way to go.
And the train would be able to travel 160 kilometers an hour. So...
remind me again, the Wuppertal one is electric.
Yeah.
And the power is on the train. The current is on the train, or the current is on the track?
It's like a third rail situation, like a subway. And you see this a lot in suspension railways or monorails. Like the third rail technology is it makes sense as a form of electric power for a train.
So the train's got an electric motor, but the current's coming from
the track.
Got it.
It's not coming from propeller, which George Benny's was. And that was actually it was intriguing to people. They,
I've never seen a propeller driven, conveyance where you would have friction of wheels or whatever.
Yeah. There have been several, one of the Salt Flats, world record, speed record holders, is a car propelled by a turbine, like a jet engine. And, the premise of the 1970s television show Supertrain was that it was a railroad train powered by turbine engines. And I think the Soviets actually had one too, a railroad train powered by turbines.
Jet trains.
And I do have a mental picture of trains powered by propeller motors, but that was not one of the topics I did not research for this show was propeller-driven railroads, except for the George Benny one, which was also a suspension.
You're right about the Russian jet train. I'm looking it up right now.
It's pretty hot.
Yeah, it's got turbines on the front.
It does.
That's great.
It's pretty crazy.
It's like they took part of an airplane wing and just set it on the front of a Amtrak train.
The suspension train design continues to kind of intrigue people, and different attempts at building them have kind of sort of resurfaced over and over the years. And most prominently, there's a French consortium of business enterprises called the SAFEGE. It's an acronym, SAFEGE, and it stands for the Société Anonyme Française d'études, de gestion et d'entreprises.
Okay.
The French limited company for the study of management and business.
Oh, I was wondering what anonyme meant.
Yeah.
It just means it's a limited liability company.
Limited liability, right.
Okay.
And so, and this is a big consortium. It has Michelin and it has Renault, and they're always coming up with fun things. And one of the fun things that they have tried to develop over the decades is a suspended monorail. And
what do you do? Rubber wheels? Or?
Yeah, rubber wheels. It's kind of like if you took the Paris Metro, but you hung it from overhead.
Yeah.
And they've built some test tracks. There's actually Mitsubishi got into the act, as you can imagine. They love trains in Japan. And
they've got lots of cool, weird elevated trains in Japan.
They do. And there are two Safage trains, or trains on the Safage model that are still in operation. One of them is the Shonan monorail in Kakamura, and then the Chiba urban monorail opened in Chiba. And the one in Chiba is the longest suspended monorail in the world, still in operation. So it beat the Wuppertal one. You really, really bumped it down a notch. But there are a lot of Safage proposals that got through the first couple stages of approval and then encountered, again, a problem of it being more expensive to build, largely because these aren't mass-produced. They're all custom one-off structures.
You don't have a bunch of people bidding on sending you cars and rail and whatnot.
You can imagine that Siemens would be happy to build these things if there were 50 urban areas that all said, we're going to spend the money to build a suspended monorail or a monorail.
Yeah.
It wouldn't take long for the industrial train makers to say, like, great, we can do that. I mean, all trains are expensive ultimately. It's just some are cheaper. Again, one of the things I learned in running for office and talking about trains and other alternate transit is that people believe buses are cheaper. And
what do you mean, like per?
People just believe that buses.
I assume buses were cheaper.
Right, and it's a natural assumption. You look at a bus and you go, well, why would we build a train here? Well, just build a bus.
Because you don't need to lay track or whatever.
You don't need to do anything to run a bus. You just run a bus. And to build a transit system is you feel like it's a great expense, and also it's solid infrastructure. It's much harder to reroute. Whereas a bus, you can say, like, turn left, turn right. Maybe tomorrow we're going to run the bus a different direction. But it turns out over the life of a transit system, buses end up being much more expensive. They're
because you have to keep replacing.
Yeah, maintenance is there's a lot more maintenance on a bus. Buses are at grade and in traffic, so they're less efficient. They're dramatically less efficient. They're just, dedicated rail on its own grade is, over the lifetime of the system, much cheaper than doing what seems like the easiest thing, which is throw more buses at the problem. And so, trying to convince the world that a Safage system is something more than just a novelty to go from your airport to your parking garage. It's still an uphill battle.
Not literally. It's probably level.
It's a level or downhill battle. The most recent suspension monorail type of thingamabobber and that's what we're calling them these days.
Schwebebahn?
Was they tried to get one in San Francisco instead of they were gonna it was gonna be a component of BART, but they ended up going with BART, the great and beautiful system that everyone in San Francisco loves and cherishes. Most recently, it was attempted in Goa, India. The Skybus Metro was supposed to be a suspended railway system that went through Goa. They built a 1 mile long test track, but somebody was killed in an accident, and then they took it down.
Oh.
So it didn't make it. But otherwise, suspended railways are they're very much more comfortable to ride in because of the centrifugal force issue. There's a lot of efficiency in the system, as we've seen from the Wuppertal Railway. They are incredibly safe generally, or immune to accident because of the fact that no one's ever going to crash a bus into them.
Maybe they don't seem safer though. Like the fact that do you think there's any kind of barrier to passenger entry by the fact that you're literally standing on nothing?
If you made them glass bottomed, I think it might freak people out. There is a famous incident where a passenger on the Wuppertal Railway got freaked out and caused a major to-do.
Well, I mean, that happens on every U.S. transit thing 10 times a day. So
yeah, in this case,
I don't think a freak out should be disqualifying.
It shouldn't disqualify the system.
Yeah.
But what happened was in 1950, a circus promoter thought it would be a hilarious idea to bring a young elephant by the name of Toofy onto the Wuppertal Railroad.
What is this to promote? The railroad?
To promote
the circus?
The circus. The circus is in town, and hey, let's put Toofy, who's a charismatic young elephant, on the Wuppertal Railway and drive her through town.
Because the railway is the symbol of the whole town.
Yeah, and it's like, and everybody's standing on the side of the street, watch the elephant go by on the train. Toofy was not thrilled, and halfway through her ride, decided, screw this, and she started rampaging around through the cars, and then crashed out the window and fell 40 feet into the Wupper River.
What's her name? Poofy?
Toofy.
Did Toofy survive the fall?
Toofy not only survived the fall, but was fine. But she injured a lot of people in her little, her brief freak out.
If you're about to get on the train and there's already a baby elephant in there, just wait for the next one.
Just turn around. And Toofy, and of course the German courts, as we've seen, are not afraid to prosecute somebody for being responsible for a crash.
I hope they went all the way to the ringmaster.
And so they did prosecute the circus for bringing Toofy on board. And Toofy ended up being immortalized, although she lived until 1988.
Whoa. The secret of longevity is to plunge into the Wupper River
The secret to longevity is to be an elephant.
Oh, yeah.
And she never forgot this experience.
I would pay extra to go on this train. I mean, if there's a psychological component to trying to get people on public transportation, I mean, to me, it's a draw that it looks cool. Like one of the prototype safage trains is have you ever seen Truffaut's Fahrenheit 451 movie?
No.
So
it's in it?
Yeah, they use one of the safage trains as just kind of a, transit of the future. Of course, I'm coming, all these board strap hangers on this crazy aerial suspended thing. And, it just made me want to travel that way.
Yeah.
Like even if it meant, a 2-seat trip or, not having my car radio or, whatever the compromise is, I would take the cool Bradbury train.
You would think, and I'm sure this is true, that modern materials science would enable you to build a suspended railway that was very unobtrusive. It doesn't have to be giant concrete pillars.
Yeah.
You could build this out of modern materials and lightweight cars and make it a really exciting form of hyper modern looking. And I think that, again, the Seattle monorail, those of us who supported it thought, how cool! And that was a big part of the promotion. Like, wouldn't this be cool? And the people that were opposed to it were like, cool isn't serious. And serious needs to look serious, and it shouldn't also look cool. And that's just another symptom of the death of imagination.
That's why Portland's beaten us. And that concludes Wuppertal Schwebebahn. Wuppertal Schwebebahn.
Wuppertal Schwebebahn.
Entry 1448.DE0227, certificate number 36460 in the omnibus. I think, by the way, now that it's too late to change it, I think it's not Longen. I think it's Longen. So, all the fun we had with Eugene Longen's name.
Oh.
Not quite as
Did I say
mellifluous.
Longen?
Yeah.
Oh, Longen, of course.
But
Eugen Longen.
here, we'll just pretend, go back through, individual listeners need to go back and drop in John saying Longen.
But none of our jokes will work. Here,
No.
I'm going to say Longen a few times. Longen.
Longen?
Eugen Longen.
Well, do you have a replacement joke for the Longen engine?
Eugen Longen is...
That might be Eugen. It's probably Eugen Longen.
Eugen Longen.
He made an engen.
I bet that's what it is. Did I say Eugen Longen?
And he turned sugar into a
cube.
into a lozenge.
No?
Eugen
Longen.
It would be a Longen lozenge, the sugar cubes.
A Longen Songen.
Oh no, wait, was he the sugar guy? Yes, he was.
Yeah.
He was. Okay.
Eugen Longen. Well, I'm sorry to all of our German listeners and anyone who is even remotely literate that I bungled that name through the entire episode.
I realized about halfway through, and then I was like,
Why correct him now?
he's got to get head of steam.
When the Germans bomb Pearl Harbor.
We, of course, live in a time when social media is prevalent. Contemporary listeners could follow us at Omnibus Project on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and so forth. I'm
Whatever.
sure. I was at Ken Jennings. John, you could find via his Patreon presence. You could send us electronic mail to complain about our German pronunciations at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. You could send us physical items. Let me see what we have here. To P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, is this another birthday card for me?
Is it?
Maybe. Yes, happy birthday. Hannah has $5.
Hey!
From Stuart, Jennifer, Sam, Claire, Lucy, and Granny Patrick. Well, thank you. Boy, everything's coming up me today.
Yeah.
It's my special day, John. When Jennifer says that when she heard women crocheting stuff, did we ask for women to crochet stuff? That seems a little sexist. I hope we didn't say that.
I don't remember.
I hope we didn't say that. She heard Jen make us minifigure toilet paper roll covers. Wow, look at this.
Cute.
This is apparently the good cop, bad cop from the Lego movie because it's a crochet toilet paper cozy that looks like a minifigure head, smiling on one side, unsmiling on the other. This one is just smiling. I don't know which of us gets the all smiling one. And she even said it's preloaded with toilet paper.
Oh, that's nice. Well, I mean, you're definitely of the two of us the renowned Lego head.
Well, do you think I have a dark side? Which of us has a dark side?
Well, I think we both have dark sides.
Not on these Lego heads. One of us.
You're not supposed to have a dark side. That's not on brand.
She also sent us one of these books of historical photos, but this one is of Riverside, California, which I can only presume is the toilet paper cozy's port of origin. I can't see because I ripped the label. Yes, Jennifer's from Riverside. Thank you so much. This is delightful. You didn't have to send spare toilet paper because we could have. We do have that here, even up in the Great Northwest.
Although she may have thought She may have thought that we wouldn't recognize what they were for and we would have put them on as hats.
But here's the thing. Each one has toilet paper in it, but then it also comes with a spare.
Oh, she gave us a spare
I
toilet
think it
paper.
may be serving the place of, like styrofoam packing peanuts.
Oh, that's a good idea. Although these are knitted things. They didn't really need to be packed with styrofoam.
And the postcard is of Uncle Sam holding up some oranges he's very proud of and saying, "I grow these myself in California." Some kind of period advertisement for Riverside, California, implying that Uncle Sam himself is an orange grower. I guess maybe metaphorically, the nation is growing its oranges in the Golden State.
Right.
Boy, I do like these a lot. Are you going to put these on your toilet, John?
Yes, for shizzle.
Thank you so much, Jen. If you would like to hang out with other fun, like-minded Omnibus listeners of Jen's ilk. Was it Jen? Maybe I'm calling her Jen and it said Jennifer. You can look for the Futurelings on any online gathering place, whether that's Facebook or Reddit or Discord. There's a bunch of them. You do not need to send us hand-crocheted toilet paper cozies if you want to support the show. For one thing, we already have some. But there are other ways to support the show, most notably, you could leave a happy review for us.
Oh, that's a good idea. We never ask people to do that. Leave happy reviews and star and whatever else people do.
I just saw a hilarious bad review of us on Apple Podcasts, but maybe
Why are you even doing that? Why are you watching? Why are you looking at bad reviews of us?
It cracked me up. Here's the newest one. John talks out of his butt a lot, but that's part of his charm. Ken is Ken.
Not so sure about that. Wait a minute. You get to be you, but I talk out of my butt a lot?
This is my favorite. The topic is, did I send you this? The headline is John Wayne Ship Story. And then the review is 1 star. Just get to the point.
Okay, that's funny.
That's pretty good.
Get to the point.
Oh, this woman gave us 4 stars, but then gave me a hard time for noting that my daughter said you shouldn't say Sacagawea, you should say Sacagawea.
So which did she want? She wanted us to go back to saying Sacagawea?
I think it's irrelevant. She just doesn't think I should be...
giving your daughter a hard time.
No, yeah, putting down this amazing trailblazing American woman and her daughter. In fact, I need to go ahead and listen to the Stuff You Should Know episode about her.
Huh.
Wow.
I think you can.
I think I'm okay.
Yeah, I think you're fine. Any other great reviews that you want to share?
There are a couple that say, "Love you both so much," and the commentary before getting into a subject is the best part.
Oh. Any that you're just skipping over the ones that are like, "I love Ken, but this John guy is a real jerk," and you're right to do it.
I did skip that one actually,
Yeah,
but there's probably a reverse one too somewhere. Or you could tell friends about the show,
That's
or
a
you
good
could
idea.
Support our advertisers by buying aluminum-free deodorant or whatever it is they sell.
Good.
Or most directly, you could send me a $5 bill for my birthday.
No. There's a better way.
Most directly, you can go to patreon.com/omnibusproject and become one of the supporters who enjoy amazing perks and
you're really getting into that toilet paper cover. You don't even know what you're saying anymore.
Well, I've noticed that the bump on the top of the Lego head is a little, it's if you fold it in, it's the height of a Lego bump, or you can make it stick up, and now he's like...
Now he's what?
A Shriner? I don't know.
He's wearing a little flesh-colored fez.
An erect Lego head? Hard to even say what's going on here. He's a nipple, basically.
Yeah.
He can be a Lego dude here, or
a nipple.
Lego dude, nipple. Lego dude, nipple. So please, if you're not an Omnibus supporter, but you have it in your budget to do so, why not hop aboard? You'll feel good about yourself.
Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived, or if it did. We hope and pray that or if it did beyond tomorrow.
Yeah, we assume it won't.
Yeah. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come, but if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus. Got a little ASMR there.
Sexy voice.
Yeah.